Brexit might genuinely be the biggest mistake in modern UK history. Immigration is higher than ever, the economy is smaller, trade has collapsed, Britain's influence on the world stage has shrunk. Every single promise made during the Leave campaign has been reversed. Not dented, reversed, which raises one genuinely uncomfortable question. How did the biggest political project of a generation end up delivering the opposite of everything it was sold on? Let's start with the borders, because that was the headline promise. Take back control, stop illegal crossings, choose who comes in and who doesn't. It was the single most powerful argument of the Leave campaign, and it's also the promise that aged the fastest. In 2018, 299 people crossed the English Channel in small boats, a very small number, easily managed by existing systems. By 2022, that figure had climbed to more than 45,000. That's an increase of over 15,000% in just 4 years. And those 4 years weren't random. They were the exact window in which Britain finalised its departure from the European Union and removed itself from the systems that had previously kept those numbers low. The key thing here is the Dublin regulation. Before Brexit, the UK was part of an EU-wide framework that allowed Britain to return asylum seekers to the first EU country they'd passed through on their way to Britain. If you arrived in the UK after travelling through France, the UK could legally send you back to France to have your claim processed there. It wasn't perfect, but it was a tool, and it worked as a deterrent because people knew the journey across the Channel wasn't necessarily going to end with them staying in Britain. Brexit ended that arrangement. The UK left the Dublin regulation and didn't replace it with anything equivalent. So the deterrent disappeared, the returns mechanism collapsed, and the number of crossings exploded. That wasn't an unintended consequence. It was a predictable and predicted outcome that the people running the Brexit campaign either didn't understand or didn't care about. Probably both. Legal immigration told a similar story. The new points-based system, sold as a way to bring numbers down, actually opened new visa routes for skilled and semi-skilled workers. Net migration climbed from around 250,000 in the years before Brexit to over 745,000 by 2022. The number didn't just fail to fall, it nearly tripled. Then there's the economy. Brexit was sold as a shot of adrenaline. Free from EU regulations, Britain would strike bold new trade deals around the world and return to its former glory as a global economic powerhouse. What actually happened was almost the opposite. The Centre for European Reform estimates that Brexit has cost the UK around £100 billion in lost GDP per year. The Office for Budget Responsibility puts long-term productivity losses at around 4%. That sounds abstract until you convert it into what it actually means for the country. Lower wages, higher prices, reduced public spending capacity, less money for the NHS, schools, and infrastructure, all flowing from a decision that was supposed to unleash prosperity. Trade was hit particularly hard. In the first 2 years after Brexit took effect, UK exports of goods to the EU fell by 14%. EU exports to the UK declined by only 7% over the same period. So Britain wasn't just cut off from its largest trading partner, it lost more ground than the partner did. Small exporters were hit hardest. Many of them simply abandoned EU markets entirely because the new paperwork, customs checks and compliance costs made it unprofitable to ship anything across the Channel. Food prices climbed as a direct result of Brexit-related trade friction. One London School of Economics study estimated that Brexit added around 6% to UK food prices over 3 years. That's roughly £250 extra per household per year, just from Brexit. Not global inflation, not the war in Ukraine, not the pandemic, Brexit. And if you want to see what the economic alternative might have looked like, it's worth looking at what European rivals did during the same period. France, Germany, and the Netherlands all recovered faster from pandemic disruption. They had fewer labour shortages, lower inflation in key sectors, and continued to attract foreign investment at higher rates than the UK. Brexit didn't make Britain uniquely vulnerable to global problems. It just made the country less equipped to deal with them. The UK genuinely fumbled the economic moment in historic fashion. So, let's talk about the global Britain pitch. This was arguably the most ambitious promise of the entire Brexit project. Freed from the EU, Britain would become a nimble, independent, globally connected nation, striking bold new trade deals with the world's biggest economies and reclaiming its place as a major global power. 9 years later, it hasn't happened. And not even close. If you're watching this far in and want more of this, subscribe. The algorithm won't do it for you, and honestly, this stuff doesn't write itself. The UK's post-Brexit trade deals have been, to put it politely, underwhelming. The deal with Australia is projected to increase UK GDP by 0.08% over 15 years. That's so small it would be rounded down to zero in most economic models. The New Zealand deal delivers similar numbers. The long-promised trade agreement with the United States hasn't materialised at all. And the deal with India, which was supposed to be the crown jewel of post-Brexit diplomacy, has been repeatedly delayed. Meanwhile, major international firms have quietly relocated operations out of London. Banking jobs have moved to Paris, Frankfurt, Amsterdam and Dublin. Foreign direct investment into the UK has fallen by around 25% since 2020. The UK's share of global financial services revenue has shrunk every single year since Brexit. The geopolitical picture is arguably even worse. Britain used to be the country that connected the United States to Europe. It had a foot in both camps. It was the translator, the bridge, the dealmaker. Post-Brexit, it's neither. Britain took an absolutely massive L on this one. Washington increasingly deals directly with Brussels. European leaders don't need London as an interlocutor anymore. And Britain, stripped of its position inside the European project, has become a smaller, more isolated country, with less diplomatic weight than at any point in the last half-century. So why did Britain do it? Why vote to leave something that was clearly delivering economic benefits, political influence, and border management tools that no realistic alternative could replace? This is where the honest answer gets uncomfortable, because Brexit wasn't really about the things it claimed to be about. It wasn't about immigration, because the people voting for it mostly couldn't have described the Dublin regulation if their lives depended on it. It wasn't about trade, because the people voting for it weren't typically worried about tariff rates on manufactured goods. And it definitely wasn't about sovereignty in any technical legal sense, because very few voters had actually read the Lisbon Treaty. Let's be real, most of us haven't. It was about a feeling that things weren't working, a feeling that ordinary people's lives weren't getting better, a feeling that the country they'd grown up in had changed in ways they didn't recognize and didn't want. That feeling was genuine, it was widespread, it was exploitable. And the political class, both the campaigners pushing leave and the establishment figures pushing remain, converted that feeling into a binary question about EU membership, as if changing one legal relationship could fix the underlying problems. It couldn't, and it didn't. The underlying problems, stagnant wages, rising costs, hollowed out public services, regional inequality, are all still there. Brexit didn't cause them, but Brexit also didn't fix them. It just added a new layer of economic and political damage on top. This is the really painful part. Brexit was a national decision made in response to real problems, but it was directed at the wrong target, and it was sold on promises that couldn't be kept. The result, 9 years in, is a country that's measurably poorer, measurably less secure, measurably less influential, and measurably angrier than it was before the vote. The tragedy is that the problems that drove the Brexit vote didn't go away. Wages are still stagnant, public services are still struggling, regional inequality is still widening. The only thing that changed is that the UK now has to solve those problems with fewer tools, less money, and weaker international partnerships than it had before. So was Brexit the biggest mistake in UK history? That's a debate that's going to run for decades. But if you measure it by the gap between what was promised and what was delivered, by the economic cost, by the diplomatic damage, by the sheer scale of self-inflicted harm, then it's hard to think of a peacetime decision that did more damage to the country's long-term prospects. The real question isn't whether Brexit was a mistake. The numbers already answered that. The real question is whether Britain ever admits it.